Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
I'm in the Matt Bernier Show here on DRF TV on live.drf.com, noon Eastern on the East Coast. I say that's why, noon Eastern. Noon East, 9 a.m. on the West Coast. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. If you're new to the show, all sorts of different ways for you to find it. If you watch it live, thank you for doing so. We're on Facebook Live as well on the Daily Racing Form page. We also obviously have this live show here, live.drf.com. If you check out the podcast, YouTube, SoundCloud, drf.com, iTunes, all sorts of different ways for you to find the show. An interesting sort of time of year for us here in racing. We have other seasons that have just wrapped up, whether it's baseball about a month and a half ago, or we're getting into the sort of infant stages of the NBA, the NHL. We're getting closer to this sort of stretch run for the NFL, trying to push toward the playoffs. But horse racing, we don't really have a beginning and end of the season. It just continues on, and we just have different stops along the way, whether it's in the north, the south, the west, wherever it may be. So things never really stop in horse racing, which makes this sort of year-end awards a little bit more interesting. Simply because you have these sort of set periods of time for these other sports, and this is how we're going to start the show, if you couldn't tell already. Based on the far right side, you can see the little bar that we've got. It's a scenario where in baseball, you begin in spring training in February, the season kicks off at the very beginning of April, and it goes all the way through. Now, the regular season awards, obviously you wrap up before the postseason begins in October, but you've got a set period of time. In horse racing, technically it starts on January the 1st and it ends on December 31st. And then it just starts all over again after that. So you're trying to really narrow down who you think are the best horses and what their best accomplishments are. And really that's what the crux of this entire thing is about. With an award like the MVP, and I'm going to use baseball simply because it just ended, and it's the most recent thing that we have in our sort of memory with awards anyway. In baseball, the MVP award is by definition awarded to an outstanding player in the American League and an outstanding player in the National League. It doesn't really dive into, are we giving it, is it merit-based? Is it based on something that has been accomplished, or is it who the voters truly believe is the best player? Now, different years, you're going to have different results, and you'll have slam dunks. Certain times it'll be the best player who happens to be the most accomplished player. Or you'll have a year like this year, where coming into the sort of voting period, the American League particularly, the National League was pretty lock, stock, and barrel. Chris Bryant is going to win. In the American League, you had 3 to 4 legitimate contenders. Maybe you can even push it out to 5 and 6. But the big three, I would say, most people looked at it as Mookie Betts from the Boston Red Sox. You had Mike Trout from the Los Angeles Angels, who I'll always call the Anaheim Angels. And you had Jose Altuve down in Houston playing for the Houston Astros. And you can throw in Edwin Encarnacion and David Ortiz and some other players, but it really felt like those three guys had separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Here comes the sort of philosophical debate, and where do you stand on things? From accomplishments, you could make the case that either Betts or Altuve had the best all-around year, whether you incorporate stolen bases, batting average, on-base percentage, home runs, the whole 9 yards. In those categories, Mike Trout was a little bit behind, but those are sort of the traditional categories. When you dive into the sabermetric numbers, really there's no debate. Mike Trout is the best player in all of baseball, not just the American League. But the big knock against him was his team was god-awful this year, and they finished last in the American League West. What do you do with that? Well, he ultimately ends up winning the MVP award, and there is some sort of there's controversy about it, simply because some people just disagree that it shouldn't go to a team or a player that's on a team that really at no point in the season threatened for anything. Brings us to horse racing, not necessarily because there's an individual in this race that doesn't deserve it and doesn't have accolades, but it really comes down to the same thing I was talking about with the baseball. Is it the best player or is it the most accomplished player? Because now here we are in horse racing. It's essentially a two-horse race. No disrespect to Frosted or any of these other horses, but it's California Chrome and it's Arrogate for Horses of the Year. The real debate comes down to, what do you believe in truly in your heart sort of determines or defines the horse of the year? Is it the most accomplished horse from January 1 to December 31st? Or is it arguably the most talented horse? I was just curious to see what certain people thought, so I threw a poll up on Twitter yesterday, and let's take a look at the results if we could. Thank you to the 240 people that threw your hat into the ring. I threw the other result out there, figuring we're going to get a couple of funny people that wanted to vote for them, realizing very, very unlikely. But You see the results there, 54% California Chrome, 43% Arrogate, 3% other. I tend to agree with that. I'm in the camp that if we're voting based strictly on accomplishments, California Chrome, for me, is very clearly the winner. He went over to Dubai, he won that race, he won multiple grade ones, he won the Austin again, he won the Pacific Classic, and he lost the Breeders' Cup Classic by, this much? Conversely, if we're talking about the most talented horse, it's hard to argue with a horse like Arrogate and making the comparison between he and someone like Mike Trout. From a numbers standpoint, if you're a Beyer Speed Figure fan, there really is no comparison. At this stage in the game, Arrogate is faster and more talented than California Chrome. From a numbers standpoint, sabermetrically speaking, Mike Trout is better than Mookie Betts, is better than Jose Altuve, better than Edwin Encarnacion, and better than David Ortiz, better than any of these guys, Josh Donaldson, simply because, you bring in all sorts of different things where he plays, the competition level, X, Y, and Z, but, so in that respect, Mike Trout won the award, not necessarily being on a good team and not necessarily having a lot of accomplishments. In horse racing, for Horse of the Year, are we going to give the Horse of the Year award to the best horse, which is probably Arrogate, which essentially is what the voters, Baseball Writers of America, did with Mike Trout. They gave it to the best player. Maybe they felt a little bit guilty too because he's only won one MVP this far in his career, but or are you going to go with the accomplishments? Because from an accomplishment standpoint in baseball, you could have easily gone with Mookie Betts, who had all sorts of tremendous numbers this year for one of the best teams in baseball. In horse racing, that would be California Chrome. So it's just one of those things. I was fascinated. I wanted to see what other people thought, and we still have some time. And as I'm saying all this, California Chrome's supposed to race next Saturday afternoon out at Los Alamitos in the Winter Challenge. We'll see. I don't think that's going to make a difference one way or the other, even if he loses. I'd be stunned. I think your voting process and thought process would be flawed if you held a race at Los Alamitos in December against California Chrome. That shouldn't be the difference maker, whether you vote for him or you vote against him. But I was just fascinated to see what other people thought. It seems like the overriding feel, and I tend to agree with this, if we're just going on accomplishments, California Chrome is the Horse of the Year because of the overall body of work as opposed to a horse like Arrogate, who did it for such a short amount of time, but he was brilliant in doing so. It's just one of those things, until we get some sort of just clear, straightforward rules on this is what you're voting for, this is what you're voting for, as opposed to leaving it up to the voters to sort of make their own conclusions. You're always going to have these sort of debates back and forth about should we be voting for the most accomplished individual or horse or whomever it may be, or should we be voting for just the overall best horse? I fell into this sort of argument with myself the first year I worked here at the Racing Forum a few years back between California Chrome and Shared Belief. I felt like Shared Belief was the more talented horse, and I don't think it was all that close. But simply because he missed the Triple Crown, California Chrome won the Derby, he won the Preakness. Then a couple other things. Obviously, the Breeders' Cup Classic, neither one of them prevailed, but California Chrome ran a little bit better than Shared Belief. That's not, factoring in Shared Belief's troubled trip that he had that day. But I've had a very difficult time deciding what do I think the Horse of the Year vote should be, or the award itself should be. Are we awarding it to the best horse purely on talent, or are we awarding it to the best all-around horse as far as accomplishments are concerned? If you go on accomplishments, California Chrome is very difficult to argue against. If we're going strictly on talent, I think Arrogate is very, very difficult to argue against. We still have some time before the voting period for the Eclipse Awards actually happens. We've got about a month and change before the Eclipse Awards. So I'm sure before then I'll give you my entire ballot, how I voted for the awards, and we'll see ultimately how things shake down. But I just thought it was an interesting thing, again, this time of year. You've got certain things going on in the NFL. Talk about Derek Carr. He had a bad night last night. Maybe that cost him. But if you're just talking about purely talented, who's the best as opposed to accomplished, it's a fascinating argument, and you can go 15 different ways. So just something I wanted to throw out there at the top of the show here today on the Matt Bernier Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go back and look and see how we did last weekend with the 3 races we handicapped, and we'll also go over 2 races, a couple of grade ones, Los Alamitos Racecourse tomorrow afternoon. Stay with us, the Matt Bernier Show.
In shall win the winner of the Gun Handicap.
This horse is the complete package. He's won from 7 furlongs to 1.1 miles. He's won on dual surfaces. He's won with and without Lasix, and he's traveled around the world and brought his A game with him.
He showed that he was a very top-class dirt horse.
Balance is key, and he was just perfectly proportioned. I think that's what made him so athletic and so efficient on the track. Well, the amazing thing about Outwork was just how similar he is to Uncle Mo. I mean, right away, of all of Rapoli's babies, he stood out as the most advanced, the most precocious, and the most talented, and that was exactly the same thing we'd seen a few years before with Uncle Mo.
Outwork wins it for John Velasquez.
To be able to win a Grade 1 like the Wood Memorial in only his 4th lifetime start was very impressive.
It is Outwork in front.
California Chrome, straight and strong. Absolutely sensational. California Chrome. California Chrome. To California Chrome. Away to the Kentucky Derby. California Chrome wins impressively.
He's gone into overdrive. California Chrome wins the Dubai World Cup.
One of the greatest performances you'll ever see.
Chrome turns to gold. Texas Red, second best, and here is one talented colt named Speedster.
I would say Speedster is maybe one of the most exciting horses that I've trained. He was a grandson of Gone West. Another horse that I had trained named Elusive Quality from that line was a world record holder at Belmont Park. Speedster showed some of that same speed. When you'd ask him the question, you know, he could answer.
One talented colt named Speedster.
12:11 on the East Coast, 9:11 the West Coast. The Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV here on live.drf.com, Facebook Live. However you're checking us out, thank you for doing so. Podcast version, we've got all sorts of ways for you to check this thing out. Before we dive into the review and preview, probably worth noting, I say probably, certainly worth noting, if you're watching this live, this is going to apply. If you're checking it out podcast, you're probably going to miss out on it. A huge carryover at Aqueduct in the Pick 6 today, starting in race number 3, scheduled post time 1:18, so about an hour from now. The carryover is $837,570. I would imagine that pool is going to be right in that $2.5 million range when it's all said and done. You can obviously play that on DRF Bets. I would suggest doing so. I hadn't planned on looking at it, but guess what? When I get out of here, I've got to get ready for a webinar about health insurance, and in that time, I'm probably going to be taking a look at the Pick 6 sequence. Again, you got about an hour until first post. That would be for race 3, the first leg of the Pick 6 carryover, over $837,000 in that pool. Let's dive into the review and preview. If you're new to the show, this is what we always do. Go over a couple of races. Better or for worse, we'll go back and review them and see how we did. Let's start things off with the Claiming Crown Jewel. This was down at Gulfstream Park. I thought going into it, the most likely winner in the race was Royal Posse for Rudy Rodriguez. Hard-hitting, blue-collar sort. Doesn't matter if it's New York, Florida, wherever. He shows up and runs his race. If I was looking for a bit of a live long shot, I threw Homespun Hero out there, even noting that my real pick in the race, and my bet was John Jones because I got the number, but let's find out what happened. Pete Ayala from the top of the lane.
Racing on from 4th is Royal Posse. He begins to hit his best stride now. With on the inside, We're All Set, followed by Ender's Cat, and they run to the top of the stretch. Less than a quarter of a mile to go in the Claiming Crown Jewel, and Diamond Bachelor comes away with the lead on the far outside. Royal Posse begins to motor in between horses, and We're All Set. 1/8 of a mile to go. Lane Luzzy trying to get one more furlong out of Diamond Bachelor. On the outside, and Royal Posse ducking to the inside. John Jones, 3 chances. Royal Posse at Diamond Bachelor. Royal Posse! Here's racing's newest millionaire and a back-to-back winner of the Claiming Crown Jewel.
Certainly wasn't the most visually impressive effort from Royal Posse, but I think that just goes to show how good this horse is. And just, you know, at the end of the day, he wants to beat you. He didn't have his A game in that spot. He had to run down a very stubborn Diamond Bachelor on the front end, but he gets the job done as the most likely winner, in my opinion, at 3-5. Again, not really giving you anything too interesting there, but Homespun Hero, he faded late. You saw him. He was involved for a little bit. He faded down the lane. Not going to hold that against him. So the live long shot, lowest likely winner, we got that one. It is what it is. Let's move on to Del Mar. We had 2 grade 1s. Not 2 grade 1s, 2 graded stakes. One of them was a grade 1. One was a grade 2. Let's talk about the grade 2. That was the 6th race on Saturday. It was the Bayakoa. I thought going into it, the most likely winner, Vale Dory, by a long shot. I really just thought this was going to be sort of her coming out moment, where maybe she would stamp herself as one of those fillies going forward that maybe she's in the likes with a Songbird and a Stellar Wind and anybody else that's over here on the East Coast as far as the Breeders' Cup Distaff is concerned. A live long shot. I thought Autumn Flower had done some good things ever since being transitioned to the dirt. I thought maybe she could come along, maybe clink up, grab a second, maybe just pick up the pieces a little bit and spice up an exacta or a trifecta. Trevor Denman from the top of the lane.
Homeward bound and Vale Dory. Moyo Honey has room at the rail. Down the centre, Wild at Heart is coming home gamely. Vale Dorry, though, still has a commanding lead, digs deep and finds more, and Vale Dorry in another classy performance this afternoon. Vale Dorry and Mike Smith far too good in the Bayakoa. They win it easy. Wild at Art second, then Moyo Honey, Show Stealer, Barbara Beatrice.
Much the best in that spot, but I have to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed. I expected a little bit more out of her than what we got. And ultimately, when you go back and you look at the speed figure, she only earned a 91 buyer in that spot. You know, if I'm thinking Breeders' Cup Distaff, and that's the way it sounds, Bob Baffert has brought that up as the long-term goal for this filly. If I'm thinking Distaff, boy, she's going to need to get it much, much better as 2017 rolls along, because at this point right now, she couldn't warm up either one of the big girls on the West Coast, and that's not including anybody else that may show up. So she's going to need to improve. Dan Ellman brought up an interesting idea. Keep an eye on her if for some reason she can't hang with the big girls on the turn back. 7 furlongs, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. I think that would be an interesting spot for her, particularly you watch the gallop out. She didn't have much gusto at the end. So Vale Dorry gets the job done as the most likely winner at 1-2. Autumn Flower, disappointing. She finished 6th at 21-1, but you take a flyer with the live long shot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. At the end of the day, she didn't get the job done for us in that spot. The Hollywood Derby was a fascinating race going into it. You could have gone 15 different ways in a 14-horse field. I thought a live long shot was Hayabusa 1. That was probably foolish for me to even say that, because the idea that a Grand Motion horse was going to be some sort of a live long shot, regardless of what the morning line suggested, was probably a little bit silly on my part. Not a vulnerable favorite was Camelot Kitten, 1 of 3 for Chad Brown that he sent over. I liked Free Rose in the race. I thought he was going to be able to go to the front and dictate the terms. That didn't play out that way, but you know what? Trevor Denman, let's see how it did play out from the top of the lane.
In behind that is Camelot Kitten. They come to the top of the lane, and Beach Patrol now strikes the front. Frank Conversation down the centre, and here comes Camelot Kitten with a late run down at the rail. Blackjack Cat battles on as well. Annals of Time out of nowhere. Annals of Time just blew past him, and Annals of Time a striking win. Annals of Time to Beach Patrol. Frank Conversation finished third.
Chad got it done. 1 of the 3 got the job done. Beach Patrol looked like he was going to roll at the top of the lane. He just sort of finished evenly. I wonder if this is what he is. He's a nice horse, don't get me wrong. Multiple grade stakes placed. He's a grade 1 winner in his own right. But Annals of Time is a horse you may want to keep an eye on. Now, obviously, there have been some physical issues with this one. He's only gone out 4 times. But the fact that when he changed leads, he exploded down the lane. Giant effort for Annals of Time. Hayabusa 1 finishes 4th as the 9-2 4th choice, 4th, 5th choice, somewhere in that ballpark. The vulnerable favorite, we hit the nose on the head. One of those situations, Camelot Kitten, he went in there. He went off technically as the 7-2 favorite in that spot, but he finished 7th. And he's another one. He's similar to Beach Patrol. I don't know that there's so much room for improvement out of him. So we got that one right. Unfortunately, the live long shot didn't turn into a live long shot. He was a middling price in that spot. So let's quickly dive into the 2 races. We're a little bit heavy on time, but you know what? The beauty of this thing, we can kind of just jockey it around whenever we need to. Let's talk about the Los Alamitos CashCall Futurity. 1 of 2 races, 2 grade 1s from Los Alamitos. Tomorrow afternoon, you'll have both of them on DRF Live starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. Let's take a look at the field if we could. This is only a 5-horse field. All eyes are going to be on Mastery for Bob Baffert. He's been pretty brilliant in each one of his 2 lifetime starts, but he has a lot of things going, not necessarily against him, but questions that he needs to answer. And at a shortage price, I made him 6-5. Again, if you're new to this entire thing, my odds on the side, that's what I consider fair value on each one of these runners. He's going to be arguably 1-5. He might even be 1-9 in this spot. The word is out. He's done nothing wrong. I don't love the fact that Baffert took the blinkers off in start number 2 and they're going back on. Usually when he takes them off in start number 2, he only does it with really, really talented horses. He doesn't put them back on. Makes me wonder if there are some questions about this horse, and Baffert even alluded to the fact that maybe he was a little bit green, and it's not a huge cup, it's a small cup for the blinkers, but I don't want to find out at 1-5 that there's something a little bit kooky with him, and maybe he's not as professional as he seems when we go back and watch replays. So he's one. I think he's the most likely winner in the race, don't get me wrong. But guess what? I also think he's a vulnerable favorite. I wouldn't want him at any sort of ridiculously short price like he's going to be. I think you have to use him. Dan Ellman and I, we went over the Pick 4 video, and I have something written in the paper for tomorrow. I think you have to use him. I think it'd be silly to try to throw him out, simply because from a buyer speed figure standpoint, he towers over the field. But I don't want to find out that for some reason he can't go 2 turns, Or they didn't. Maybe he's just a little bit goofy, and that's why the blinkers are going back on. My pick in the race is the other Baffer in there, Show Me Dilute. He has beautiful, beautiful pedigree, particularly at Los Alamitos. His full sister, Tiz Midnight. She won the Bayakoa when they ran it at Los Al a few years back. So most likely winner and vulnerable favorite for me is Mastery, my pick in the race, Show Me Dilute. Let's move on to the Starlet, a much more interesting race as far as betting is concerned. Let's take a look at that field. We've got a field of 9 signed on, 2-year-old fillies. All eyes are on American Gal, I should say. Both she and Union Strike are exiting the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Each one of them had their own trouble in the race. American Gal, I think, by anyone's estimation, had the worst of the 2 trips. But at the end of the day, boy, there's no guarantee that she has to go 2 turns. And Mike Watchmaker, the Weekend Warrior, he brought up the biggest interesting sort of piece to me in that, are there really trips in slow races? The Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies was not a particularly fast race. And when you consider, sure, she was wide on the first turn. She got fanned about 10 pass wide. But at the end of the day, if that were a swiftly run race, did she finish up the track, and did she only finish 3rd simply because that wasn't a good race? We'll find out. I still think she's the most likely winner in the race. I have a live long shot in here. I understand if people want to laugh and maybe she'll finish up the track. But you can see, based on the graphic, Mopetism is my live long shot. She's also my choice in the race. She's 15-1 on the morning line. I made her 13-1. I thought she had a little bit of trouble in the most recent start when she ran behind Go On Mary. Go On Mary's a speed sort. She's going to go out to the front. I think Mopetism, she's by Uncle Mo. She galloped out pretty well. I think the distance is only going to help her case, or cause in this case. Look, I don't trust any of the other fillies particularly. I think you have to use American Gal, particularly in a pick 4, pick 3, anything like that. But I want to take a shot, and I think O'Neill has this one ready to go. She may not win, but I think she can certainly hit the board at a big number. I picked her on top. We'll find out. I made her 13-1. Most likely winner in the Starlet for me, American Gal. Live long shot. Mopetism for Doug O'Neill. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go over some NFL picks as far as Week 14 is concerned. Back under 500. We'll dive into that a little bit. We'll also get you ready for DRF Live tomorrow, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern, here on DRF Live, DRF TV, however you'd like to look at it. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into all that. Matt Bernier Show. Stay with us.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
$12:24 in the East, $9:24 in the West, wrapping things up here on the Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV. Again, you're running out of time. 118 is the first leg of the Pick 6 carryover at Aqueduct. You can play that on DRF Bets. $837,570 is the carryover. Let's dive into some NFL picks. Going into last week, 15-15 on the year. Went 1-2, unfortunately. The Bengals covered for fun. Foolish on me for not checking the weather between the 49ers and the Bears. That was a disaster, just the grossest game of all time. Colin Kaepernick, I think, finished 1 for 4 for 4 yards, and then before they yanked him. And then the nightcap, Craig. The last time I'll ever trust the New York Jets, I don't care who the quarterback is, I don't care who the coach is. Todd Bowles is probably going to get fired. The Jets were a disaster on Monday night, and I should have known better. The Patriots have been beating up on them for the past 10 years. I should have known better. But anyway, 1-2, we're back under 500. 16-17 on the year. Got to get to 52%. And now the pressure is kind of, I'm feeling it a little bit because we're running out of time. It's week 14. We've only got, 5 weeks left, including this week. So let's dive into it. The first game, let's take a look at NFC East battle in Philadelphia. The Redskins at the Eagles. It's a pick. I simply think the Redskins are a better team. The 3-point sort of home field advantage, if you will, if you take that out of it, they think that the Redskins should be a 3-point favorite. I tend to think that Kirk Cousins, at this point, they are in must-win mode. You know, you talk about teams that are in desperation mode that you need to win if you want to get into the postseason. The Redskins can't afford to lose any games going forward here. They need to win this one badly. I'm sure the Eagles are going to be jacked up for it and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I just think Washington's a better team. Give me them straight up. It's a pick, so I'll take them straight away. The Cincinnati Bengals, they were good to me last week against those Eagles that we just talked about. They're at Cleveland. They're laying 5.5. Now, Cleveland is terrible. Cleveland has not won a game yet this season. Cleveland is also terrible against the spread. 5.5, for some reason, it's one of those, I can't say what I really want to say, but it's one of those, if it stinks like something, it may be something. I'm kind of feeling a little bit nervous about this one because it feels entirely too low. I know the Bengals haven't had a good year, but you're telling me they're not a touchdown better in the Battle of Ohio? I think they win by, like I said, 6, 7, 10 points, but boy, for some reason that one's not sitting very well with me. But like I said, I'm laying the 5.5 on the road at Cleveland. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals. And then Sunday Night Football, you have first place on the line in the NFC East. You have the Dallas Cowboys -3 at the New York Football Giants. The Giants, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Jason Pierre-Paul is done for at least the regular season and likely some of the postseason if the Giants get that far. They're the only loss on the Cowboys' resume thus far. That was the first week of the season. Dak Prescott's first start, Ezekiel Elliott's first start. Zeke has a good chance to put himself as the sort of leader in the clubhouse as far as the MVP is concerned after Derek Carr's tough performance last night. And I got a tweet from Richard Tangeman, hopefully I pronounced your name right, that the rumor has it that last night, fourth quarter, Raiders are driving, Derek Carr throws the ball up, Amari Cooper seems to be ready to roll, and all of a sudden he just completely loses it. Apparently the rumor is, allegedly, that the spider cam that is in the middle of the field that follows, the field up and down, interfered with the pass. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll find out. That would be an interesting sort of side plot to that entire thing. I thought it was just a matter of maybe it was cold and maybe the wind got a little bit gusty, and Cooper didn't seem all that sort of straightforward to begin with. That route wasn't the cleanest to begin with, but anyway, I digress. We go back. Cowboys -3. I'll lay the points at the Giants. So the 3 games this week trying to get back over 500 going down the stretch. The Redskins in a pick at the Eagles. The Bengals laying 5.5 at the Browns. The Cowboys laying 3 at the New York Giants. DRF Live, Saturday afternoon, DRF TV, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. Dan Illman, Mike Beard, they'll start things off, and then we'll transition following the Way to Wild Stakes. Myself and Illman will bring you through it. Also worth noting, we've got a promo code that's going to be airing a couple times throughout the show tomorrow afternoon on DRF Live, offering 50% off of DRF Plus. So you're going to have to tune into the show. You get the code, you put it in, you save 50% on DRF Plus. I think it's a pretty good deal. Give us a look starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. You can see we've got obviously the 2 grade ones at Los Alamitos. Those are probably going to take the lion's share of the attention as we get into the California portion of the card. 12:28 on the East Coast, 9:28 in the West Coast. The Friday Formula race today, we're not going to show that one today simply because it came off the turf. And we thought all along it was going to be on the turf. They don't have any bad weather, but the powers that be in Maryland decided turf racing for the season 2016 is over. I respect the decision. Would have been nice if we had known that earlier in the week, but it is what it is. No big deal there. We will show you the Saturday race of the day momentarily. Also want to give a shout out to our buddy Jason Beam. Tonight are the Beamy Awards, and I know that's turned into a phenomenon on Twitter, so that'll be interesting. Obviously, everyone's all excited about it. He's been doing it for a handful of years now. He does good work over on the Bet America Radio Network. So good luck to Jason tonight and everybody else that's waiting with bated breath. Hopefully some of you will be Beamy Award recipients after the evening is over. Without further ado, again, 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow afternoon. Check us out, DRF Live, DRF TV. Let's take a look. Ilman and I went over the formulator race today for Saturday. It's the Los Alamitos CashCall Futurity. We'll check back in with you next Friday here, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Matt Bernier Show.